that's how we want to live. We want to live to the very end, full of passion, full of curiosity, enjoying our life. There's no reason why we can't do that. But it requires us to be able to examine these aspects of our life and to ask questions, right? Did I fulfill that, or is it still unresolved in me? Can I go back and somehow come to terms with these stages of development?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Soul Sessions with Creative Mind. I'm Debra Berndt Maldonado. I'm here with Dr. Rob Maldonado.
Great to be here.
And we are excited to continue our series on the great minds of psychology. And last week we talked about Erikson and the stages of development. And we are doing part 2 of stages of development. Last week we talked about under 18, under 20. And today we're talking about adulthood.
Yeah. We got to the identity crisis.
Oh, no. Here we go. Well, before we begin and dive in, I want to remind you to subscribe to our channel if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you are listening to us on one of the podcast services, please click subscribe. I can't talk today. Click subscribe and you will not miss another episode.
Absolutely.
I also want to mention that if you are a life changer, you're one of those people that are listening to this podcast, and maybe you're a coach or a therapist, and you're thinking, I really or any kind of service professional, helping professional that you want to help others, and you're really getting a lot of knowledge from this podcast. We have a Facebook group called The Art and Science of Changing Lives. It's all about changing lives if you want to be a life changer. So we invite you to join the group on Facebook. Just search for it, Art and Science of Changing Lives, and we'll continue the conversation after every episode.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about, so identity crisis, we left off.
Yeah, we just to recap, we talked about from birth to 18 years of age and all the stages that we go through, all of us as human beings, and the kind of skills that we develop along the way. Now, from 18 years of age onward, right, we are considered adults. So there's a big shift there.
Yeah. So we're in our 20s, we're getting into college, we're starting our, first job, serious job, maybe moving out and getting our own apartment.
Yes.
Or right now, a lot of 20-year-olds are still staying home with parents. So this is the stage of my favorite stage because I started my career as a love coach, helping people find love. And this is intimacy or isolation.
Versus isolation.
Yeah. And so it's really like, where you're in grade school, you're kind of having peers, and it's more of a group experience. And then it starts coming down to, well, who am I going to mate with, right? It's a different type of relationship. It's more than just making friends and fitting in. Now you're kind of moving toward, I got to think about starting a family on my own, or thinking about kind of dating someone and getting to know someone on a one-on-one level. Maybe you started that in high school, but this is kind of more serious because, the high school first love is more the fun. Some people marry their first love, but most people kind of move on. And this is where you're trying to figure out, do I want to be intimate with someone, and emotionally, or do I want to be by myself?
Yeah, so this is where we see kind of the stacking of the pattern, right? In other words, that you have to come to terms with the previous stage in order to fulfill the demands of the next stage. So if you don't have ego identity, or if you're confused about your role, then it becomes more difficult to choose a partner or to decide if you're going to marry and settle down or be a single person or just date. You're confused because you haven't dealt with that previous ego identity crisis.
Oh, and that brings up so much for me because I didn't know who I was in my 20s. I was Fun Debbie and pretended to be fun. And I kind of abandoned my brainy self and thought that's what men wanted. They wanted the carefree, non-serious girl. And I was trying to be something for other people that they'll like, and instead of being true to myself and knowing who I was. And then if I don't know who I am, why would I let anyone get close to me? Yeah. So that you build walls when you don't know who you are because you don't want people to find you out. Right? You don't want people to see underneath behind the curtain of what you're trying to create. So intimacy is about allowing someone to you're okay with what's inside, and you're allowing someone to see that.
Yeah. And here he gets a little poetic because he says the psychosocial modality here is to lose and find oneself in another. So what he's saying is that you have to be confident enough and sure enough of yourself to be able to lose yourself in another person, meaning to give yourself completely.
And even if you think about the act of sex, it's that kind of like opening to be naked with a person and connect with that person. And in the sexual act, you're losing yourself in that other person. You become one body. And so that, but also then we're dealing with emotions and heart connection and all that as well.
That's right. And again, that intimacy versus isolation. Now, this is an important one, again, because he's talking about this spectrum that we neither want to go completely into intimacy because that would mean we're dependent on the other person. And we don't want to go all the way to isolation either because that means we can't get close to anyone. We want somewhere in the middle. And a healthy way to approach relationships is in the middle where you have your self-identity, your ego identity, you've resolved that ego identity conflict, but you also are willing and able to open up to another human being entering your life.
So this is interesting because I worked with so many clients over the years, people with love, and one of the things I see, one of the patterns is this falling in love after the first date, or falling in love and kind of fantasizing in your mind that you're just talking via text. You haven't even spoken to the person yet, and you're already thinking, this is the love of my life, or like jumping in really quickly. So that's the idea of like opening up, maybe having sex too soon because you just want that relationship, but you're kind of almost like too open that you don't even know what you want. You're just like kind of putting all your everything on that person if they like you back. And so that kind of like jumping in too quick.
Absolutely.
The love bombing, they call it.
Yeah.
And so that leads to that other spectrum, which is promiscuousness, like being too promiscuity, too loose with the with everything. You know, you're just like not selective.
Yeah, because the opposite side of the coin is exclusivity. So if you do not kind of find love and find a way to come to terms with love, with allowing another person to be important in your life, then there's only this other maladaptive way of doing relationships where you're either very promiscuous, meaning you're going from relationship to relationship and not really bonding, or you're too exclusive that no one's good enough. No one's good enough for me. I can't find the right person. They're flawed. I keep running into flawed individuals.
That kind of like you're looking for this perfect person and they're not out there, and like you don't let anyone in. So it's the extreme of everyone's the one. Everyone's the one. They're pretty attractive. They're the one, or no one's the one. And that kind of what you want to do is have that balance where you're open to maybe this could be, but also not, jumping in too quickly and assuming, kind of acting from that fantasy.
That's right. That's right. So he says this is an important stage in adulthood, and if we do not come to terms with this one, the next one, of course, is more difficult. But the next one, he says, and this is from the 20s all the way into your 50s, he calls this middle adult or middle adulthood. Generativity versus self-absorption. So generativity means to take care of others, to share your wisdom, to teach.
And continue to grow too, right? That kind of moving toward like continuing to feel like you have value in the world and you're growing and you're not just stagnating.
Yeah, so let's assume you do meet the challenges of the previous stage and you get married, you find your partner, you find your role identity, and you're settled in essence as an adult. Then the big challenge after that is your work life, your ability to work outside the home and to contribute to society. Now, that's an important aspect of work, obviously, because it gives us our sense of purpose beyond our family life.
So this is 20s to 50s.
Yeah, so it's a big chunk of life, right? So we have a lot of time to figure it out, but we do need to figure it out.
Is this also too like tied to purpose, like your purpose of like giving back and contributing, and then the opposite would be self-absorption, which is more like it's all about you and what can I get out of the world versus what can I give back?
Precisely.
And then, like you said, it's a balance, because if you're all about giving, and you're not giving to yourself, that's not okay. And then if you're all about just taking, that's not okay. So it's about that balance of give and take, that that you give enough to yourself so that you can give to others.
That's right. And most of the students, the clients that we work with, they're in this stage, right? They're over 20. Obviously, they're over 25, most of them. But certainly up into their 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s. But they are in this stage of generativity. They're finding their purpose. They're finding a way to connect to something bigger than just their family life.
And is it because at that age, when you get older, you start to feel like you learn so many lessons and you want to share and you want to help and you want to mentor, even if you're in the corporate world and you have people working under you, maybe you're 30 but the 20-year-olds that are the interns, you're kind of helping them along and helping them and using your wisdom of your years to share your knowledge.
Yeah. It's a great time to be a teacher, a professor, a coach, a therapist, of course, all these helping professionals, but even executives who, like you said, are running companies and mentoring other people along. That's the task. And it feels rewarding because you're doing this important developmental stage of your life.
And so the imbalance is that overextension or rejectivity.
Yeah, so the workaholism, right, that we see often associated with work life, this is where it plays in, that people haven't found a way to give back. And so they're pouring a lot of their energy into work without really understanding what is the purpose of this, right? And they think, well, it's just making money or making more money or getting the next promotion. And it's not very satisfying because it's a maladaptive pattern, according to Erickson, that is not fulfilling the primary purpose of developing this connection, this care to others.
So can I ask you a question? Because you say how they compound on each other. So let's say in adolescence, in high school, you don't really know who you are. And there's a lot of people out there that they really don't know who they are. And it's not that they don't know, but they're afraid to step into it. They're kind of like conforming to their social group or whatever and their persona. Yeah. And so they don't know who they are. And then they get into like 20s and they don't know since they don't know who they are, they can't really find the right person. Like you said, if you don't know who you are, the universe doesn't know who to match you up with. And so now you don't know who you are, and then you're not really having that intimate, meaningful relationship. It doesn't mean you're not married. You can get married, but you don't have your own identity still. Maybe you're this person's wife or this person's husband now. You're defined by that marriage or that, the other person, maybe being successful and you're riding their coattails or whatever. But then you get to the stage of generativity versus self-absorption. This is just something I've noticed. They kind of like build upon each other. Is that when you get to the stage and let's say you decide, I want to help people. Like for me, I wanted to help people find love and I wanted to help people change their life. And I could see sometimes like early on that I was overextending myself because I was trying to find my identity and try to find this intimacy and love from my clients or from people, like trying to be, kind of like almost, what I'm saying? You overextend because you don't know where the boundaries are within yourself. And so each stage you just sort of and I know for me this happened, and I know a lot of people that are in the health industry, whether you're a therapist or coach or healer or massage therapist or hairdresser, overextending themselves because they haven't completed, maybe not fully balanced out this idea of who I am, what I stand for, and understanding my ability to get my own like kind of love and tenderness without needing to constantly get it outside of ourselves.
What's
What do
the
you think?
question?
No, I was just saying that is kind of like how they compound in each other. And
Oh,
this is
yeah,
what I
exactly.
see that
Yeah.
that like one like the ego identity I think is so important getting that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that okay, you didn't get it in high school. That's a question you should ask yourself. Like if you are having trouble overgiving or not finding the right relationship, maybe you should say, do I know who I am? Right. And that's really where Jung's work comes in with that kind of, we're living our life on the persona level and then we're really not knowing who we really are. So it causes a lot of like disharmony in our life because we don't know who we are. And such a root of even just identifying it with the ego, like as having a strong ego, like you said, you need a strong ego to do individuation.
Absolutely. And also think of how far back the purpose element goes, all the way to 3 to 6 years of age. If you lost on that one, right? If you didn't get it right or come to terms with it, then it shows up much later in your life when you're doing your important work and you can't seem to find the meaning of what you're meant to be doing.
So I think that between 20s and 50s and maybe even 60s, it's the most important part of your life because you can work with those early developmental milestones in your life right now and complete those. And you want to do it sooner than later so you can live the rest of your years without feeling like you're catching up again. So it doesn't mean that none of us go through those stages perfectly.
That's right.
And so we can all like at that stage, like there's 30 years or 40 years we have to come to terms with all of that and find who we really are. And so after 50s, 60s, what happens? And I think these may change because 100 years ago, people only lived to like their early 60s. And now the life expectancy can maybe move. I think it's the 80s now and the 90s. So these probably may shift a little bit. And maybe there's another level after this that we might have to add.
Yeah, I mean, models are not perfect. They're simply designed to help us understand psychosocial processes and give us like a framework. So beyond the 50s or into the 50s, you get into integrity versus despair, according to Erickson. And he says here to be through having been to face not being. In other words, you're facing now the big existential questions. And Jung also talks about this. He was known for kind of this second part of life, kind of that it brings up a lot of the big questions in life. What is the meaning of my life? What did I leave behind? What do I think about life after death?
People also talk about legacy. Legacy.
All
And
those
then
things.
like you're kind of conscious that you're getting older and like life is going by so fast and the feeling of did I accomplish what I needed to accomplish and like you said, that almost like questioning your spiritual ideals and is there a soul? Do I survive after death? Those kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And he calls this psychosocial virtue wisdom. You want to gain wisdom at this stage. You want to feel that you've learned something from all these past experiences, all your stages of development and growth, that there's been some wisdom gained through those experiences. Otherwise, you fall into despair. And most of us are somewhere in the middle, of course. It's a spectrum, again, from integrity versus despair, meaning the
like
despair.
Integrity meaning you have like you kind of feel like you led a good life, basically.
Yeah, you feel whole, complete, and that you're on the right track. Whereas the despair is always, there's a little bit of anxiety, there's a little bit of questioning, a little bit of uncertainty that prompts you to ask those questions and gives you that urgency. So again, you need both, but you want to balance them out.
So if someone's more in despair, would that, I know there's these ideas that if you're depressed and when you're older and you lose your will to live and you can actually create illness in your body. And now my father, when he was 69, when he was diagnosed with leukemia, and I was asking him, like, how do you feel? Like, and he said, you know what? I lived a good life. And he goes, I made a lot of mistakes and I know like this is happening to my body because of what I did to my body. He smoked for 40 years. And he said, but I lived a good life and I have no regrets. And I thought that made me feel at peace, And so many people, when they get ill, when they get older, they kind of feel like, oh my God, that get, like you say, that despair, like what a wasted life. I think that's the biggest fear that everyone has. I wasted this opportunity. So you don't want to get to that stage feeling despair, because, living the rest of your life in regret is not very fun, and not very fun is to put it mildly. It's painful.
Absolutely. And the maladaptive pattern, or the malignancies, as Erickson calls it, is this falling into presumption, meaning you see these older people that they're just closed. They say, I can't learn anything anymore. Life is not interesting to me anymore. I'm not curious anymore. Or that despair that we were talking about, that it just feels so anxiety producing to think about the end of my life and all these kind of the closing chapters of my life, that they can't enjoy it. It's in despair.
My Nana was like that. My dad's mom was very depressed, and my dad was 40 when she was 40 when she had my dad. So she was old, like in her 80s when we were kids. And all I remember her is being sad. And my mom would tell me that she's just sees us going on vacation, and she was like in her 80s, and she couldn't do all those things she did as a child, and she kind of had a lot of regrets, like almost like hated the aging, like, and resenting it. And she got really sick, at the end, and it was just like sad to watch. Like, I never saw her really truly happy. Where my other grandmother, who had nothing, not a dime to her name, was like the happiest woman, and she was out there every day, in the community until the day she died, and she was living her life every moment. And that's what we want to do. We don't want to like kind of waste away. We want to have this like rich life from, every second of our life should feel meaningful, and not in an extreme way all the time, but just feel like we're meant to be here, and we're enjoying life and the little things, the beauty of life.
Yeah. Carl Jung got to live into his...
he was
85. I think he was 85. But there's some great interviews that the BBC did with him live in his home towards the end of his life. And you can see how alive and how joyful and how passionate about the work he's been doing, how he is this incredible way. And that's how we want to live. We want to live to the very end, full of passion, full of curiosity, enjoying our life. There's no reason why we can't do that. But it requires us to be able to examine these aspects of our life, and to ask questions, right? Did I fulfill that, or is it still unresolved in me? Can I go back and somehow come to terms with these stages of development?
And even if you're not in your 50s yet, I would say that it's really good to appreciate your life, whatever stage you're at, whatever you've accomplished or haven't accomplished yet, to be in gratitude for yourself, like your life, wherever it is. And if you could practice that now, when you get older and you can't move as fast as you can, or you can't, you have pains in your body because you're aging, all those things that happen, you can't run a mile anymore. You're not in despair because you've cultivated that mind of gratitude, that mind of curiosity, and you want to start that early before you reach that edge of that milestone, and you'll be more prepared.
Yeah, most of our students are in this 20s to 50s, generativity versus self-absorption stage. So it's a great time to be a coach, because it hits that mark, right? That you're taking care of other people. You're using your life in a creative, meaningful way. And also in our process, of course, you're looking at yourself. You're that self-inquiry element that we teach and we train our coaches in. So it hits all of these marks perfectly. The other thing I wanted to mention was Erikson himself lived into his 90s, 92. He died in 1994, so fairly recently. And of course left a great contribution. That's why we're talking about him today. A great mind, contributed to psychology, to coaching, to child development in incredible ways. And we want to carry the work forward, right? We invite you to help us kind of test these models and bring them up to date. Like you said, now people are living longer. life is different.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with all this technology?
And also, a lot of people, you don't have to go, get a master's degree in psychology. You could be a coach and be able to help high functioning people that just want to understand how their mind works. Like, this isn't pathology. We're not treating anything. We're just educating people on their mind and themselves and their inner world and helping them live a happier life. Because really the life isn't happy, and life isn't dictated by the things that they have in life. Happiness in life is dictated by the mind, the state of mind that person's in. Because you can be in terrible circumstances, but if you're always can control your mind. And if you have that, you have freedom. And so to help others find that freedom is really a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
That's why I love what we do, Rob.
Yeah. So again, thank you. And we invite you to our Facebook group.
The Art and Science of Changing Lives with Creative Mind.
Yeah, we hope to see you there. And if not, we'll see you next time on this podcast.
Yes, with another great mind of psychology. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube or on the podcast service that you listen to. And we'll see you next week with Soul Sessions with Creative Mind.